Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Think what to say then for a minute. Mental block. So what's going on out here then? Well, what's going on is we're in for a cold snap. Possibility of some 5 to 10 centimetres of snow farther up country. Chances of us getting that here are pretty slim. Possibly some rain turning to sleet, but it was cold last night. It got down to about 4 or 5 degrees outside. Now my temperature in the grow room, the thermostat is now set to 13, which means it drops to 12, and then the heater and the fan kick on and bring it up to 14, and then gradually it goes back through the average 13 until it kicks in again. It's kicking on quite frequently. Now at the moment the door to the lounge is open, which means my house is getting cold, and I've had to put my jumper on and it's only lunchtime. I tend to get colder as the day wears on because I start doing less, start sitting down and watching the snooker on telly, for instance. And if you're just sitting still, you feel the temperature drop more than if you were busy and working. But I'm not doing work just for the sake of keeping warm. Right, so day lengths. We are currently about 5 weeks from the shortest day, longest night. So our day lengths are pathetically short for growing tropical orchids. That's how it is if you're in the UK, unless you use artificial lighting, which I don't. I have done, but I'm not doing it now. So basically for the next 10 weeks, we're in short days. The amount of difference between now and the shortest day is not enough to worry about. It's about half an hour. But we're currently just less than 9 hours officially. That's sunrise to sunset. But as I've said before, at least half an hour each end of that is useless daylight for growing orchids. It's too dark. Yeah, it's got to brighten up from the point of sunrise. So you're looking at least half an hour to get to that point where the light is useful. So technically, we are already less than 8 hours. Tropical orchids, in the main, 11 to 13 hours. Yeah, 14 even better. But so there we go. The light's gone. You know, and I mean, we get a lot of cloudy days, dull days, which reduces the light level within the short days. So what's going on then? Well, the simple answer is not a lot. There is some growing going on. Orchids are forcing themselves under duress, under pressure, and they're not necessarily doing it very well. We see it as growth, but if you compare it with the growth you'd get in sort of May, June, July time, it's quite pathetic in comparison. So you could just say that there's not a lot going on, and there isn't. Now, when you're watering, you notice things. When I watered my Coelogenes, I noticed my Natida is still not doing very well. I noticed my flower spike on my Coelogene cristata is progressing slowly, but that's probably not going to bloom until well after Christmas, you know, into, you know, late winter, early spring. But I did notice that this orchid back here has got a lot of this going on. For a single orchid, there's far too many leaves doing this. So I thought we'll have a quick look. And one of the main reasons for that happening, not that there are many reasons, it can be a fungal infection, but it seems odd to me that it only affects the leaf tips and doesn't affect the rest of the leaf or the bulbs. It could be bacterial, yet again. Why would it only affect the leaf tips? It can be dry air, yeah? And the parts of the plant farthest away from the root source where the moisture comes in is the bits that suffer first, because they're the last to get the moisture, yeah? It could be that there's not enough moisture getting into the plant because the roots are failing, yeah? It could be a calcium deficiency, yeah, where again calcium is a non-mobile element, And if you don't push enough into the plant, then it can't get to the extremities. Yeah. I saw, this is slightly off track, but it's on nutrients. There's a discussion going on, I've forgotten where now, on CalMag and how to treat an orchid. And you know, should you, if you want to get extra magnesium in the orchid, should you soak the plant? The whole plant this is, not, yeah? And the one thing you have to bear in mind is all of the additives, all of the fertilizers, all of the sort of things you might want to do to adjust nutrient deficiencies will only work if you have a root system. You can chuck what you like in the pot. If you haven't got a decent root system, it doesn't get into the plant. And if it's not going into the plant, it's building up in the pot, which for the small amount that might be getting into the plant is no good at all. Yeah. And one of the things that can cause this is a salt build-up in the pot. So we've got to do deductions now. What could it be then? Well, the humidity in here is the same. So why would it affect just that one? So I'm discounting that straight away. It's got a reasonable root system as far as I know. It's well rooted in. Came from Burnham's. When they split stuff up, they don't tend to put them up for sale until they've sort of rooted in. I'm happy that it's got a root system. I don't know how good it is. What else? Calcium deficiency? Highly unlikely unless there is a pH issue. Yeah? Calcium and magnesium, going back to that CalMag discussion, are best absorbed. You've got a problem with pH because if you look up a pH absorption chart, you get two types on the internet. One of them is for soil and one of them is for hydroponics. And they do show quite distinct differences. Different elements are absorbed quite differently in the soil to how they are in hydroponics. You have to bear this in mind. But we don't grow as hydroponics. No, but the way you grow your orchids is possibly in bark, possibly in leca, possibly in lava rock. Yeah, there are various things you could be growing your orchids in. That's a lot closer to hydroponics than it is soil. So the hydroponic charts are the best way to go. You might want to get up a soil one and a hydroponic and find the differences and split the difference. Yeah, but you know, I go with the hydroponic charts because they're closest to how my orchids are growing. They're not growing hydroponically, but they're not growing in soil. And basically they get water poured through them. You know, and it doesn't sit around with all the bacterial effects that soil can actually have. So yeah, so powers of deduction then, and processes of elimination. I've eliminated the air humidity. I've sort of semi-ruled out a poor root system. What else? Calcium deficiency? Unlikely. Everything that my plants get has got calcium in it. It's there for them to use if they can use it. Therein may be the problem. Yeah? If that media is breaking down and starting to turn a bit acidic, calcium is one of those that needs to be up near the higher end of our pH usage for orchids. There's very few orchids want to go above 7. Most are happy between 6 and 7. But closer to 6, you're becoming quite acidic. Closer to 7, you're heading towards becoming alkaline. Yeah? So what could be wrong then that's stopping the calcium getting in there? What about the pH of the media? What about if that media is starting to break down? So although the calcium's going in there in one form or another, it might not be readily available in enough quantity. And therein lies another thing to do with orchids. Some orchids are classed as calcium hogs. They like more than others. And a deficiency will show in those easier, yeah, than it can with some other orchids. So what's the variable then that I haven't mentioned? In all this coming and going and toing and froing and swinging round and round and round, haven't I mentioned? I haven't mentioned this is the only one of my cotyledons that has not been repotted. So I don't know what's in the pot, I don't know how good that media is, and I don't know how good the root system is. The problem is in that pot in some shape or form. This is not the best time of year to be getting that out of the pot. In addition to that, it's got flower spikes. So what I propose to do is give it a good flush and wash everything through. So if there is any build-up of salts, we flush it through. And then what do? Do it again. Yeah? So that's going to get a good flush. That may or may not solve it, but it's highly likely to deal with the problem. On the grounds that the others are okay. Yeah? When you're doing a process of elimination, if you've got multiple types of orchids in the same genera, how are your others doing? How's this one right next to it doing? Well, it's got nice plump bulbs, it's got nice green leaves, it's got one old leaf that's not too happy. Green leaves, green leaves. It's just that one, and that's the only one that hasn't been repotted. So we might have to give that a couple of good flushes and clean out the media. And then if the media is starting to go off and starting to break down, at least it washes it through. Yeah? It won't solve the problem long term, but it should fix it short term. Now when you get brown tips on your leaves, notice I specifically said brown, not black. Yeah, this is brown leaves, not black. That's a different thing altogether. You've got another possible thing is that cotyledons sometimes react badly to too much heat. Well, it certainly hasn't got that in here at the moment. I've got my jumper on. I'm cold today. So yeah, so we've got not much growing going on. We do have some flower spikes pushing on. Cymbidiums, I believe every single one is now in spike. Even my little showgirl, I think when I watered this, I just noticed, I think, perhaps not, I'm sure I saw a tiny little shoot somewhere. Yeah, there it is. If you look at the very base of that pseudo bulb, on the left of it is like a sheath, yeah? And then if you look in the crack between the pseudo bulb and that sheath, there is a shoot. I'll put it down there and give that a pull. Ah, come on. There we go. There's the spike just starting. So even that one is coming into spike. So that is now, every single Cymbidium is starting its spikes. And I will be using the bloom feed on all of the Cymbidiums now from now on. You know you're not supposed to be in here, don't you? This is not a spider sanctuary, but when they're that size, as far as I'm concerned, they don't do any harm, and they could possibly be doing some good. That's got to eat something, and I know what it eats, tiny little bugs. And they're the bugs that shouldn't be there. Well, none of them should really, not even the spider. But I'm stuffed now. My hot box can't be used. It can't be used on the grounds that it needs quite a few hours. The door would have to be shut. If I shut this door now, the heater will want to come on. And you have to have still air for the hot box to work, and it needs to be on for the size of the hot box and the volume of air I've got in here. It needs to be on for about 4 hours. to penetrate every nook and cranny. That's going to drop the temperature down below what I'm prepared to accept. And then I've got to vent the place, and to vent the place I've got to have the door wide open. So I can't use the hot box now, probably at all, until next year. So I will have to just do spot treatments if I get any bugs. What else? There was something else I was going to say. Oh yes. When in the last video I did on the new feed, the bloom, and I was I was very well impressed with the pH drop. God, I could have got some water out of a peat bog, and I doubt if the pH would have been as low as that. Michael McCarthy, thank you for your help, actually emphasised the point that if you've got high phosphorus values, which is what the bloom is, you've got low nitrogen, high phosphorus and average potassium. So if you've got a high phosphorus value, that becomes phosphorus something or other acid. Basically, it is incredibly low as a pH value. It's incredibly acidic, and often even forms the component parts of pH down. So when you're, if you've got a low phosphorus value and you want to reduce your pH and you use a pH down, you're probably adding phosphorus back in inadvertently. So that explains why that was incredibly low. Now that's not a problem. I would suggest it would be a serious problem if you weren't using a pH meter and you didn't find that out, and you were providing quite strong feed, as I do for my Cymbidiums. They're doing a lot of work at the moment. They might not be doing it as fast as they would do with full-size day lengths, but you have to look at the part of the world that a lot of the Cymbidiums come from, the species. You're looking at quite a lot come from China and around that area. They're not all from tropical places. They also can come from quite high up. These are cooler growers in the main, cool to cold. So they're not slowing up because of the temperature. They're only slowing up because of the shorter days. And if they're coming from areas that are reasonably far north from the equator, they are used to a shortening of days in their winter period. So it doesn't affect them anywhere near as much as some other types of orchids. So they're busy growing spikes, and some of them are still maturing new growths at the same time. They might even be doing some roots as well. But the one thing I am going to have to do is, this is one large pot. These are the ones that I bought for the Cymbidiums, this size and this size, and they are deep pots, yeah, but they're not very wide. So although they're deep, because these are quite like a deep root run, they're not wide. So this one's already nearly filled the pot. So there isn't enough room for next year's new growths in that pot. Now, I might get away with this one, but given that the new growths are actually right up against the side of the pot, that'll have to be repotted, and it'll probably go in the next size up. This one that's in the bigger pot, it's offset. So round this side, it's right up against the edge of the pot. There's spikes coming all over the place. Now there's quite a bit of space round here. That's because I potted it badly. I didn't balance it. I didn't put it in a place where the new growth had room to expand. So the new growth is now up against the edge of the pot, and this space round here is going to waste. And that's probably because I wasn't quite sure where the new growths were going to come from. Because if you look at this particular Cymbidium, where are the old bulbs? Where are the old leafless bulbs? Yeah, well, there aren't any, are there? So how do you define the back of the plant when you haven't got a bit like that right at the back? Because I haven't. And most of my Cymbidiums are exactly the same. They haven't got the old leafless bulbs yet. Yeah? You look in there. I mean, that's a big Cymbidium. Well, where are the leafless bulbs? There aren't any. The only one, in fact, that's got leafless bulbs, or bulb, is Hannah's one, the one that's got the virus. He says keeping the camera well away, because of my hands basically. Yes, so bear that in mind. If you use a bloom fertiliser, it will be high in phosphorus, and anything that's high in phosphorus is going to drop your pH. Yeah. Now, the word I was trying to get in my feed video that I've just done was buffers. And do you think that word would come? It's called getting old. Or lack of coffee, or both, I don't know. But yeah, I was trying to think of that word. And a good, well-produced fertiliser will have buffers in it to stop it altering the pH as much as it might do with just the raw elements in there. And it may be that the Orchid Focus Bloom has associated buffers to stop it dropping the pH like a stone. But obviously that Dynagrow hasn't got the buffers in it. As I said, you know, taking the pH down to 4.2, that's akin to a peat bog. So acidic. If you walked across some peat bog at that level, it would dissolve your welly boots, I should think. So acidic. But yeah, that is well worth bearing in mind, that something that's high in phosphorus is highly likely to drop your pH. Now, if I'd used that fertiliser at a pH of 4.6, I'd just as well have used clean water for the amount of good it would do, because most of the nutrients in our fertilisers are not absorbed at that level of acidity. There are some of the microelements that absorb better at lower pHs, you know, like sort of around 5.5 to 5.8, but they are minute quantities and they still get absorbed in tiny amounts even at slightly higher pHs. To drop a pH run for a feed down to 5.5, well, let's say 5.8. To do that, to get a couple of micronutrients in and exclude almost completely, in some cases, some of your larger, far more important elements, to me, is not worth doing. It takes a very, very long time for a micronutrient deficiency, excuse me, to show. Could be even years. The one that will show is iron, but the way that iron is added to fertilisers, it's oh, what's the word now? That's not going to come, is it? It's not worth trying. But they do something to it to make it readily absorbed at reasonable pHs without going to very acidic. So under normal circumstances, your fertilisers should just work, but watch out for high phosphorus values. And thanks for pointing that out, Michael. As they say, you learn something every day. And in this game, that never stops. I suppose in 10 years' time, when I can't even remember what day it is, I'll still be learning something, I expect. I just won't remember it. Oh dear. What else? There's not much else. I'm just having a natter today because I'm not doing any work out here. There's nothing to water. Certainly not repotting anything in these temperatures. And I'm about to shut the door and drop the temperature out here even more. It's come up to 18 out here now. That's my high. And that means my lounge has gone down to about 18 as well, which is not comfortable for sitting around in. He's sitting here with my hat coat, gloves and scarf on. Not that I've got any of those. I got a glove. I got coat, obviously. I haven't got any gloves, only gardening gloves. I do have a woolly scarf up in my drawer somewhere collecting dust. I certainly haven't got the scarf out since I moved in here anyway. And I have a woolly hat, which I don't like wearing because it makes me head itch. But I do have a fleece lined hood on my outdoor coat, which I'd much prefer to do than wear a hat. So, but you lose a lot of heat through your head, you know, that's guaranteed, especially outside with a wind chill. So there we go, that's what's going on. Something else, adding a normal feed into resting type dendrobiums like our nobiles during their rest period is highly likely to encourage kikis. Yeah? Now, I'm in a catch-22 with at least one of my nobiles because it's still growing. And it's got 2 canes still maturing. Actually, that's 2 separate plants. But you can see there is still active growth going on. So I'm reluctant not to give them any feed at all. But I think in future, the only feed they're going to get is when I mix up the bloom feed for the Cymbidiums. Now obviously that's far too strong for a resting nobile, but I can peel a little bit of that off and add some water to it to dilute it right down, and then give them a little bit of feed that's got very little nitrogen in it, and hopefully that'll just about keep those growths ticking over without encouraging the kikis. Obviously, the lower the temperatures for the nobile hybrid, the better in the winter. They're getting the brightest light they can get. They're right up against the glass, and they're over the side of the grow room that gets more light. Because of these monsters, this side of the grow room, okay, it's got glass round it, but it's nowhere near as bright because most of the light's coming in from this side. Yeah, especially now that huge tree's gone in the garden. This is where the light's coming from. There's a house there, goes right up to there. That's blocking the light. Light comes in round here. So this side of the grow room is much brighter than this side, and putting these in the way of that light makes this side even shadier than it was before. Oh goody. Well, they gotta go somewhere. Or we don't have any, which I'm not prepared to do. Now that I have some, and I've seen them bloom, I've repotted all of them, I think, at some stage, and I'm happy doing the repots. I'm happy that the timing's okay. I'm happy with them being outside. I'm happy with the way I have to water them outside. I'm happy with the wheelie staging. I'm not happy with the way the wheel actually collapsed twice. I have a plan to fix that, but that doesn't need to be fixed until they're due to go outside next year, and that's May. So we won't even be worrying about that now. But what I propose to do is the idea of the little square, because the top of the wheels is a square base with 4 holes in the corners. So it's got to screw into something that's a comparable size. That square of timber on the bottom of the leg is not stable, and it's only held in with 2 screws. The problem is the leg, not the screw, if you see what I mean. It's not that, it's the fact that the leg doesn't attach to the whole of that square. So that's the bit that's got to change. So what we do is we get some pieces of timber, probably just some more 2B1, the same as this, and screw it in that way into the legs, so that the screws are going through the pieces of wood that way into the leg and are flush with the square on the bottom. Then we can put quite a few more screws into that square up into those pieces of wood, and that will make the base of the leg a very solid structure, because the patio is not level. The pavers are a bit bumpy, and with the weight bumping them around just weakens them. Now okay, I put stronger screws in, but I'm not happy to be wheeling that about on that patio knowing that the wheels can actually collapse. So we will deal with it, and we'll deal with it next year. Not even going to think about it yet. And yeah, so that's how I plan to fix it anyway. I plan to fix it by making the legs have a square base that's solid. Yeah, unlike now, the square that the wheels are attached to If you can imagine, if it goes over a bump in this direction like that, this bit here is going to try and do that, isn't it? And it can do that because there's nothing holding these bits. So we will get that fixed. What else? Oh, the plant clips for the spikes on the Cymbidiums. Oh goody, they do the ones I would like to have got in my local DIY store. Well, we went there and the lady looked it up on her phone, and we eventually found them because we couldn't find them anywhere on the shelves, and she eventually found it, and she looked up stock, and they are in stock in every one of those do-it-yourself chain branches except my one. They don't do them. I went, oh golly gosh, well, something like that. I hadn't gone out just for that, otherwise I would have been annoyed. So basically I came home and I found some on eBay, and now they'll arrive soon. And they're different because they are the same sort of plastic grabby type thing, but they are actually spring loaded. They do have a metal spring clip running round into the pointy bits, so they really are sprung loaded and not relying on the flexibility of the plastic. So they're a bit better than the ones I've got. So those will be coming soon, because it did dawn on me, it's 2 or 3 clips per spike. That's a lot of clips. You know, 2 or 3 spikes per plant on average, more on some. So, you know, that's a lot of clips, isn't it? So that gives me a start anyway. Some of the clips I've got will be okay for some parts of the staking, but you know, as I said, it's these spikes, once the buds separate and they start to spread out, then a clip can actually be put round higher up the spike between the buds. So, but we haven't got to that stage yet. Obviously, they're still pushing on. Are you going to come off now? Nope. So it's a yellow leaf. They just annoy me. I'd prefer they were gone. So there we go. A chat about brown tips on leaves and the possibilities. A chat about a bloom type feed and what effect it can be having on your pH. If you don't check it, you won't know. And that could have quite an adverse effect. If you're using it to feed your plants and increase your possibility of decent blooms and everything, if your pH is dropping down too much, then your fertilizer's not working. Trust me, the elements are not being absorbed at those lower pHs. They're not going in there. So so basically it's just not working. So you need to get it sorted. So and as I said, I use the silicon to actually as a pH up. I never need a pH down. You know, some people have got both, but I never, you know, my RO water is about 6.8, 6.9 as a pH value, TDS of 8 or 9. That's where I start from. And as soon as I put fertilizer in, if I use CalMag on its own, it remains about the same. But it would probably go up a bit, in which case it would be too high, and then I'd need a pH down, which is why I don't use CalMag on its own, because I can't be bothered messing about with it. CalMag is quite happily mixed in with your normal feed to boost the magnesium and the calcium that you hopefully have already got in your feed. So you're just giving it a boost, and without being silly, adding a bit of extra calcium and magnesium doesn't do any harm. But don't go mad. If your calcium value is too high relative to the other elements, it'll stop them working properly. So you're then actually, again, you're using a feed that's just not going to work properly. So try and keep a sensible balance with your elements. Don't go mad exaggerating one at the expense of others, because that's what will happen. And I would suggest if you mix CalMag with another type of feed, and use it, I personally wouldn't store it away. I'd use it fresh. I mean, I only mix up what I want. So I very rarely waste it, and I don't like it sitting around. So I mix up what I want and I use it. And sometimes it means I'm a little bit short, and a couple on the end of the run might not get fed that time round. So I'm not mixing up another lot for like 5 plants or something. So that's how it goes. So feeding regimes, watering regimes are all on the change. I mean, mine are reduced down to as low as they're going to go now. And they will stay like that now till into February time. So, the most frequently watered things now are still looking at 8 or 9 days as a gap. And I'm not feeding every time now. There's not enough growth going on to warrant feed levels like that. And apart from the Cymbidiums, my feed levels have dropped down as well as my frequency to accommodate the fact that it probably wouldn't be getting used because there's not much growth. And if you keep pouring it in the pot when there's not much growth going on, the salts will build up. And if your salt levels start building up in your pot, that stops your fertilizer working properly. Yeah? So you're making it worse by adding some more in. So there's a balancing act to do there at some point or another. Right, so that'll do for today. It was supposed to be a short video. It's ended up quite long. Let's have a quick look at these, because these are low down. We don't see these as often, perhaps. The Her Alexandre, yes. Oh, there's a trapped bud there. There's a bud being caught in between the spike and the stake. So we'll release that, give it a chance to open if it hasn't gone too far. And that's all the buds on that. That's done. However, this other hybrid over here has still got plenty more to do. Yeah, I mean, there's 2 spikes here that haven't even started opening yet. There's a knocked bud there that's bent. But yeah, we've still got the buds opening on this spike, just opening on this one. Then we've got this one and this one to go. So there's still quite a bit more to open on that one. And yes, and then the other 3 are species or close to. So that pot full of grass and the smaller pot full of grass next to it, and this one here with the nice strong new growth on. If that attempts to bloom, I'll stop it. I want a stronger plant first. So that's my Miltoniopsis, a new idea. And Blackjack's going now. See, the colour drops and it goes floppy. So that'll be gone soon. But hopefully we'll be replacing it with this one here, which has 2 buds. There's another bud coming up here, as well as this one. There's nothing else in bud in the Paphiopedilums, but yeah, so that's what's going on. Not a lot of growth, but things are going on. It's like this giant bulb here that I've been watching, thinking that's an absolute beauty. Well, I hadn't noticed that. What's that then? Now with cotyledons you have to look, because some of them produce a spike from the base of the pseudo bulb, like the cristata, yeah? And some of them produce their spikes out of the centre of new growths. So they do vary. So what is that then? Is that a new growth? Or is that a spike? Well, we'll wait and see. I could look up the type of cotyledon and find out how it blooms. There is a site, I think it's Australian, but it's just called cotyledons.com, and it's got every species with a good description. It's got rating, a star rating up to 5 stars as to whether it's worth having in your collection, and the fors and againsts, and size issues. Some cotyledons are absolute monsters and some are quite small. That can make a difference to whether it is suitable for you or not. but that's a good site to go and have a look. It's got some hybrids in there as well, but quite honestly there aren't that many Coleogeny hybrids. It seems to be a genus that people haven't bothered with. You know, if you think how many Oncidium hybrids there are, or even worse, Cattleyas, you know, but the Coleogenies haven't got a huge number of hybrids. They tend to have picked on the best species, and a lot of the hybrids are primary crosses. They're just two species crossed together to combine the colours or reduce the size or whatever, or try and introduce fragrance where it wasn't before. So that's what a lot of them are up to. But as far as blooms are concerned, I mean, that is an unusual bloom, and that is almost perfection. See you next time. Bye for now.